Hi, I'm Dierdre Rae, and I lived with undiagnosed OCD for the first 19 years of my life. I grew up with the stereotype of OCD, right? Cleaning, being type A, organized, and I never personally related to any of those things. So to be honest, OCD was never massively on anybody's radar. And by anybody, I mean my family. I was diagnosed with ADD when I was about 6 or 7, I think, and then re-diagnosed with ADHD after my OCD diagnosis in 2017. The reason I mentioned the ADD and the ADHD is because growing up, any little thing that I did that was out of the ordinary, we kind of blamed the quirkiness, because I was a quirky kid, on my ADHD. And there are a lot of people with OCD who, struggle with code disorders, if you will. Their OCD tendencies will get blamed on that. Because in fairness, sometimes OCD affects some of the same things, like my bad grades, inability to focus, my depressive episodes, my irrational moods, and then my checks and compulsions were just kind of, oh, that must be the ADHD. I remember my mom saying to me later on, she's like, I always thought you had ADHD with just like a little bit of OCD. I'll never forget. So when I was younger, I think this was when I was in high school, I would have to walk up and down the stairs, a certain amount of times. If it didn't feel right, or if I didn't think clean thoughts the whole way going up the stairs, I'd have to go back down and then come back up, go back down, come back up. And one time I was doing this and I thought I was alone, and I didn't realize that at the top of the stairs we had like this little outside porch thing. My mom was looking at me from like inside the window. She was just like, stop, like, don't do that, because she would kind of get mad at me for doing the compulsions. If we're just gonna put things out in the open, like my OCD growing up was annoying to people. Obviously now we know that I couldn't help it, but at the time it was like, why are you doing that? But growing up, obviously there was a lot of shame intertwined with my compulsions because I have to hide them. And my parents were obviously like, you don't know what to do with that, or like, how do you parent that? How do you parent a kid flipping on and off a light switch? They saw it was affecting my life, and they wanted me to snap out of it so I could live a normal life. And because, they only saw the tip of the iceberg, they didn't understand all of the intrusive thoughts beneath the surface, because I did not say a word to anybody. I genuinely never once opened up to them about my intrusive thoughts or what I was feeling, because my OCD also had a thing where if I spoke about it, I would speak my thoughts and fears into reality, and I never wanted to do that. They did send me to like therapist after therapist, and all of those therapists I didn't speak to. So to be quite honest, when a therapist probably comes back being like, it doesn't seem like she has any issues, because I only talked about super surface level things, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm fine, I'm good. They probably just assumed I was being dramatic or doing it for attention, I'd say. I mean, I'm speaking on behalf of them. Basically what I'm saying is nobody ever catered to my OCD, which is funny because that's actually exactly what you're supposed to do. And I think a huge reason why I didn't like quote unquote snap a lot sooner, for lack of a better word, because to be honest, if my parents had catered to my compulsions, I would have thought that there was acceptance with that instead of trying to push myself to change it, if you will. I don't know how to really explain it. I've mentioned this in almost all of my other videos with NOCD, but at 19 I had to drop out of college and enter a treatment center at McLean Hospital in Boston. And it's something that I'm very open about despite the stereotype, because I feel like it's so rare for OCD to be depicted correctly with how intense and life-ruining it can be. It doesn't really get worse than having to go to a mental hospital, right? Never in my wildest dreams did I think that a stereotyped cleaning disorder would be the reason for somebody's rock bottom. Now, it's been over 8 years since I've been diagnosed and started receiving the proper OCD exposure and response prevention therapy treatment. And I don't meet the medical criteria to have OCD anymore, which is fantastic. Obviously, I still have it, but I don't meet the requirements to have mental illness. But that being said, only the last 3 years has it been something that I've started opening up about. Because the OCD stigma is so widespread, it's hard to actually talk to people about it because nobody really understands the gravity of the situation. I never really spoke about it online because I thought that it would honestly be met with people thinking that I was weak or weird, because I was like so affected by something, once again, that is stereotypically a cleaning organization disorder. It's literally something that society deems as coveted. People assume it's a trait that you want, and here I am like complaining about it online. Like I was really scared that I was gonna get like backlash or something. Or not scared, but just invalidated. I just honestly held a lot of shame, I think. A few videos on TikTok, and some of them were getting millions and millions of views, let alone likes and comments and shares and all of those things. I've always had like a bit of a thing with accepting the fact that I have OCD. I've accepted the fact, but I didn't like the fact that I had it, right? So I didn't like engaging with it very much. It would be very rare if a video took off that I would even read the comments of other people who were having OCD. It honestly wasn't until I started working with NOCD and posting for NOCD every week on Instagram and TikTok that I truly started embracing having obsessive compulsive disorder. I remember when NOCD reached out and I was like, oh my God, imagine like there was a point to me having OCD. I was also very aware at that time, I would have never posted about it myself. I wasn't there. I didn't have the strength to do that yet, to be honest, on my own accord. It was not a trait or quality or a thing that I was anywhere willing to embrace about myself. I had focused more on anxiety, depression, eating disorders, even self-harm, because I felt like those disorders people understood the gravity of more. I was about 6 months into posting every week with NOCD. And then I don't know when it exactly flipped, but I started loving the fact that some people knew me as, you know, the girl who had OCD. It started becoming a thing where I wasn't viscerally ashamed of what I had been through. It was something that I was starting to become proud to admit that I had overcome. I started answering comments and getting a lot of DMs, and people were telling me that they were either going to start getting therapy through NOCD, or they were going to go get diagnosed, or that they had never known that these were even symptoms, whether that was for themselves or for their friends and family, or just, you know, things like it made me feel like not crazy or like less alone and all of that stuff. And because of that, because of being so open and allowing myself to be vulnerable, I've found so much peace and happiness in that, and in my diagnosis, which is something that I never thought I would say. Like, once again, I'm at a point where I don't mind the OCD even as a label. I'll happily be known as the OCD girl. And I think it's because not only have I worked my butt off to get to where I am today mentally, and I just never realized like how big our community is and how silent we have had to be, and how lost I think everybody felt until this age of social media, bringing it to light. And honestly, to be part of that experience is one of the best gifts that I've been given in my entire career on social media. I was so angry with my diagnosis in the beginning, and now like I couldn't be happier with, once again, the community that I'm a part of. I stopped hating myself because I started seeing people like me who I thought were incredible and great. I started viewing people who I saw were also suffering, and I was actively being like, I view you as so much stronger because of what you're having to go through. Like, you have to deal with so much pain that other people don't necessarily have to go through. And I don't know exactly when that flip switched for me, but I started viewing myself that way too, and giving myself a break, I should say, more so than like viewing myself in that way. Just like I had to do with exposure therapy, I had to stop pushing my intrusive thoughts away. I stopped doing that with my OCD and my OCD diagnosis as well. I started embracing it and sitting with the fact that I had it and it wasn't going away. And as much as I hate having the disorder, I feel like I now kind of have had it for a reason. Like, the fact that I was able to come out the other side and I didn't know a single person ever to have done that is one of the biggest accomplishments of my entire life. I started realizing that I was hiding one of the most important things I not only had done for myself, but for the people that I love and the people that loved me. I did something that I never thought I could do that changed the trajectory of my entire life. And once again, the people who cared about me and loved me and that I loved their lives as well, because they're no longer worrying about me. I just kind of started being like, why am I embarrassed? Like, think about that. Like, how is my biggest success also my biggest embarrassment? I got to a point where I was just like, this is silly. People can think whatever they want. I did something amazing that I'm proud of, and I'm gonna talk about it. I have to live with this disorder that has plagued my life and has plagued so many other people. Our lives from the start has had hurdles that most people never have to face. I actually only found true happiness after receiving my diagnosis. I was able to find that happiness because I got the proper help. I was actually honestly able to find it before I even started becoming open about it and embracing it. Before I started embracing it though, I even dove into learning about it, because at the end of the day, it is an interesting disorder regardless. And then when I started talking about it and finding a whole community that helped me fully embrace this part of me, like, I am not my OCD, but it is something that I have, and I can't change that. And once again, I'm proud of who I am today despite it, because I could have gone in a very different direction. I really mean this, where I don't think I would be as happy in my life today if I hadn't had to go through what I went through. I appreciate every friend that I make, every moment that I have that's not interrupted with intrusive thoughts, every trip I take, fear I overcome, because of how much I feel like I missed out on enjoying and being present in the moment when I was growing up. I push myself, I'd say, a lot harder than most of my peers, constantly, because I constantly want to be growing and be better and never be as bad as I was before. I always am wanting to be a better version of myself so I can learn how to grow and adapt. And it's all because I had OCD. Like, that was my catalyst. That was my huge catalyst that I had for all of this change. Who knows? I don't know if I would have ever moved abroad and like put myself out there. Exposure therapy, I've implemented it into every single aspect of my entire life. I get to live this life, a better life, because of my OCD therapy, my exposure and response prevention therapy. This therapy gave me happiness. And then my community of people with OCD helped me have acceptance. If you want to receive the exact same treatment that I received, go to NOCD.com. Every single one of their therapists is licensed and trained in OCD therapy and exposure and response prevention therapy. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you guys have a great day.